You ever wake up and look in the mirror and don't recognize the person staring back? Like your life doesn't even look like yours anymore. Like you followed all the rules and you worked hard and you climbed the ladder and you still end up feeling like something's missing. And now you're just kind of, going through the motions. Like you're moving but not really going anywhere. Like you're searching for some sort of lost sense of purpose. I think a lot of millennials are walking around right now with this weird combination of emotions that don't seem to go together. It's like you're grateful for what you've built, but you're also tired of maintaining it, where you're like successful on paper, but you don't actually feel successful. You're doing what you thought you were supposed to do, but then there's this voice in the background that keeps asking, is this it? And, maybe you've tried to answer that question before. Maybe you've Googled how to find your purpose at 1 a.m., right after a long day of being productive for everyone else except yourself. Maybe you watched a dozen videos that made it sound like your purpose is this one magical thing that you're supposed to discover. And if you don't figure it out fast enough, then you're wasting your life, which is not stressful at all. Super relaxing. Love that for us. But here's what I actually think. I don't think that we have a purpose problem. I think that we have an identity problem based on decades of performing and pretending and perfectionism, grinding to be worthy, trying to be impressive, trying to be good. And eventually you burn out so hard that you don't just lose your energy, you start losing your sense of self. So if you've ever stopped long enough to look around and think, there's gotta be more than this episode is for you, okay? Today, we're talking about the millennial journey of finding purpose after burnout and shifting the entire way you think about that. Not as pressure, but as permission. Okay, so here's what we're getting into. First of all, we're going to talk about what got us here. Hustle culture, corporate conditioning, and the belief that your value lives in your output. Second, we're going to try to reframe what finding your purpose actually means. Okay, because I don't think that purpose is this one perfect thing that you uncover like a hidden treasure map, right? Like purpose is something you build through curiosity and truth and alignment. And third, I'm going to give you some really simple, doable ways to start leaning back into who you are, your creativity, your values, your aliveness, okay? Even if it's in small, imperfect steps. And then last but not least, we're going to wrap up today with talking a little bit about like what emerges on the other side of all this. Because there is a version of you beyond burnout, believe it or not. A version that's not just surviving, but that feels clear and grounded and connected again. And you don't need to figure out your entire life today, okay? You don't need a 5-year plan. You just need one honest moment of curiosity. And that's enough to begin. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Peter, your average everyday millennial out here trying to figure out what's next for me, even after the last 20 years of chronic burnout. And right now, at least, the way that I see my purpose is simply sharing what I'm learning in real time, being vulnerable and reminding you that you're not behind or broken for feeling this way. Okay, so if you don't feel your purpose today, that's okay. We're not forcing it. We're rebuilding it. Because maybe purpose isn't something that you find. Maybe it's something that's inherently within you just by being you. Welcome to the Millennial Reset, a soft landing for your messy middle. A space for our generation to do the real work of unlearning and rebuilding. For the ones choosing rest over rush, peace over pressure, and alignment over achievement. Because the comeback and the reset isn't about becoming someone better. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. I'm glad you're here. All right, so let's get started with getting clear on like what got us here, right? Because this what's next feeling didn't come out of nowhere. It's not random. It's not you being ungrateful or dramatic. It's what happens when an entire generation is conditioned to chase success while never being taught how to feel fulfilled. And honestly, this purpose struggle goes all the way back to childhood. Because think about it, right? When we were kids, we were dreamers. We wanted to be artists, singers, athletes, presidents. Our imagination was limitless. But we were also raised inside of a very specific blueprint. Go to school, do well, be good, get the job, work hard, move on up. And if you followed that blueprint, the promise was pretty simple. You'll be safe, you'll be stable, and you'll be happy. And when you're a kid, that sounds like a pretty good deal. So we did it. And then as we got older and time started coming close to picking the things that you were supposed to do for the rest of your career, those options became less and less limitless. Sure, like we were told, you can be anything that you want to be, but only if it was practical, only if it was profitable, only if it fit inside the version of success that our parents were taught to believe in. So when it came time to choose a major or a career path, a lot of us picked the safe option over whatever really made us feel alive. Okay, not because we didn't care about happiness, but because we were still operating under the shared belief that more money equals more success and more success equals more security. And for a while, this worked for us, right? Even through the 2008 Great Recession, even through the setbacks and through the chaos, we hustled, we adapted, we climbed, we kept going until one day it stopped working. And now there's a whole generation of us out here looking around like, when do I finally feel the payoff? When do I get to start living the life that I feel like I was promised? And that's, I think, where this real crisis starts. Not because you didn't work hard enough, but because you wake up and realize something that's pretty hard to unsee. That you've spent years becoming someone for everyone else. Your boss, your parents, your resume, your LinkedIn feed. And you've been doing it for so long that you barely recognize yourself in the mirror. You sit there thinking, I did everything right, so why do I feel so empty? And there's a certain grief that comes with that. Grieving the life that you thought that you were building but didn't pan out like you thought. But I need you to hear this loud and clear. That's not failure. That's a sign that the map that you were given wasn't built for where we're going. We were handed directions to a destination that no longer exists. And we've spent so long trying to follow it perfectly that we lost touch with who we actually are. It's like, when you're born, you're like this pure purpose, right? Whole and complete in you. And then as you grow up and the conditioning starts stacking on top and the expectations and the pressure and the achievement and the approval, until one day you look in the mirror and you can barely see that original version of you anymore. And that is the moment that you realize that maybe you weren't chasing the wrong dream. Maybe you were playing by the wrong playbook altogether. The one that glamorized burnout, normalized exhaustion, and taught us that if we weren't constantly improving, we were falling behind. And hustle culture made this even worse, right? Because the big companies didn't just want your time, they wanted your identity. They rewarded availability, self-sacrifice, and people who could override their own needs and keep producing. And even for those that found the good paying 6-figure salary jobs with free snacks and Friday happy hours, perhaps you realize you can still do everything right and still feel like something's missing. And I think it's that narrative that I think we're all so familiar with. It's that the voice that says, I don't know what I want, I just know what I've been expected to do. And I think that's the purpose identity crisis right there. Not that you don't have purpose, but that you've been living someone else's definition of it. And part of the problem is that we've been taught that purpose is something that's outside of ourselves, something that we have to discover, that you have to get right, that you have to pick once and carry forever. But I think it's more flexible and evolving than that, built through lived experience and the way that you choose to show up in the world. Because for so many of us, what we do became who we are. Our identity got so tangled up in a job title, and then when the job stopped fulfilling us, it doesn't just feel like a career problem, it feels like an identity collapse. And even when the burnout smoke clears, you're left with a blank slate, where instead of feeling freeing, it feels terrifying, which is exactly why the answer isn't find your purpose faster. The answer is come back to yourself first. And that's why we need to shift the way we think about purpose. Because the old narrative around purpose is basically a recipe for anxiety. So let's start by breaking this myth right now, okay? The myth that says that your purpose is one perfect thing that you must discover. And once you find it, you finally feel fulfilled forever. Sounds really cute in a motivational quote, but in real life, it turns purpose into pressure. It creates this constant background noise of, I'm behind, I should have it figured out by now, and what if I'm wasting my life? But as far as I'm concerned, purpose isn't found, it's built. It's built through experiments and experience, through choosing what actually feels like you. So let's switch it up. Instead of asking yourself, what should I do with my life? Try asking this instead. Who am I becoming? Who am I becoming? That question changes everything, okay? Because what should I do sounds like a test. Like there's one right answer and you can mess it up. But who am I becoming is a direction. It's an identity. It's an alignment, an intention. And it takes purpose out of the human doing category and brings it back into the human being category where it belongs. And, we've spent so many years doing what other people needed from us that we've forgotten how to simply be ourselves. So again, it's not that there's no purpose inside you. It's that maybe you've just been disconnected from the part of you that knows what feels meaningful. And here's the biggest millennial purpose block of them all, is that we always ask ourselves, how can I monetize this? Right? Before we even ask, how do I even enjoy this? Right? Our conditioning is so tied to productivity and output and earning that we can't even enjoy something without immediately turning it into a business plan. We'll be like, oh, I like painting. And then our brain goes, but can you scale that? Can you brand it? Can you make passive income from it? Can you turn it into a course? It's like, calm down, capitalist goblin. I just said I like watercolor, right? But seriously, right? When you believe if it doesn't produce something valuable, it's not valuable, you cut yourself off from the very thing purpose needs to grow, which is aliveness. So here's the reframe for you today that's going to change the game. Your purpose isn't just what you produce, it's what you become. Purpose is who you are when you stop performing, who you are when you're not chasing approval, who you are when you're living from truth instead of fear. And when you live that way, purpose isn't something you have to hunt down. It becomes something that you naturally emanate. Purpose can be a way of living, and those purposes can express themselves in a million different ways. In your work, yeah, sure. But also in your relationships, your parenting, your creativity, your community. It's not one rigid lane. It's a living thing that's supposed to evolve as you evolve. So the shift is simple, but powerful, right? Stop treating purpose like something you have to find outside of you and start treating purpose like something you build by coming back to yourself. And not in a way that requires you to quit your job and move to Bali or figure out your entire life in a weekend, right? Just small steps, small experiments, small moments of honesty. So, let's talk about what that looks like in practicality, right? Here's the real question. How do you actually start doing all this in real life? Because we don't have the time to disappear into the woods for 6 months and discover ourselves, right? Some of us have jobs or kids or bills or a group chat that never shuts up. So instead of making this complicated, I want to give you 3 simple, we'll call them purpose practices, right? Think about these like quick check-ins that can help you stop living on autopilot. And quick note here before we dig in, right? You might not have full control over how you spend your energy at work, but you do have more control over how you spend your energy outside of work. Okay, so we're going to focus on 2 things here, right? How you choose your energy when you do have a choice, and how to protect your energy when you don't. All right, so here's the first purpose practice, right? Before you commit your energy to something, I want you to ask yourself, does this make me feel alive or approved? Because millennials were trained to chase approval, the gold stars, the praise, the validation. But approval and purpose are not the same thing. Okay, approval feels like, oh, this is going to look good. This is going to make people proud. This will prove that I'm doing enough. But aliveness feels like I lose track of time. I feel more like myself. And even if it's hard, it feels worth it. And this question is powerful, right? This whole idea of does it make me feel alive versus approved? Because it doesn't require a life plan. So pick one thing this week that feels alive, even if it's tiny. And even at work, you might not try to, choose what you can do, but you can still ask, how can I bring 5% more aliveness into this? A creative tweak or a different approach, a project you actually care about, anything, right? All right, let's move on to purpose practice number 2, okay? Same thing, ask yourself a simple question. Will this give me my energy back or take more than it gives? Because purpose isn't just about meaning. It's about sustainability. Okay, some things are meaningful but drain you into the ground. And some things that aren't meaningful keep you stable, right? So the goal is not perfection here. The goal is awareness. So before you say yes to something, check in with yourself. Does this energize me or deplete me? Am I choosing this from desire or guilt? This week, try it out. Protect one energy leak. One thing you stop doing out of obligation. One yes that you turn into a, let me think about it. One boundary that keeps your battery from going into the red. And finally, purpose practice number 3 here, okay? Because if purpose is built through experimenting, then curiosity is your compass. So here's the practice. Every day, give yourself 10 minutes to do something with 0 productivity expectation. Okay, no monetizing it, no turning it into a side hustle, just you being a human. From checking boxes to tapping in. Okay, this might be journaling one page or doodling, playing music, or simply taking a walk without a podcast or a playlist. Just learning something random for no reason, maybe. Okay, and then at the end of that, simply ask yourself, do I feel more like me than I did 10 minutes ago? Because that question is purpose in real time. Okay, start with 10 minutes. Start with something that your nervous system can handle. It might not feel comfortable at first, especially since those things that are so unfamiliar to our, left brain thinking default. But the more you do it, the more you rebuild trust with yourself that it's safe enough to just be. That's the secret. So there you have it. 3 simple purpose practices to start stepping more back into yourself. Does it make me feel alive or approved? What's the energy ROI and the 10-minute curiosity? Small check-ins, small experiments. That's how you come back to yourself. Because purpose doesn't need to be forced. It starts to reveal itself naturally. That's how it gets built. So here's the point, right? This isn't something and shouldn't have to be something that you have to force or find outside of yourself. This is something that comes naturally as you begin to peel back all those layers that were never you to begin with. Whether that's through therapy or self-help or just listening to the Millennial Reset, you get to take up space. And the space that you take up should be based on everything about yourself and who you are at the core, whatever that looks like from one day to the next. So before you go back to your life, I want you to take one deep breath. Okay, because if you've been walking around with that quiet heaviness that says I should have it all figured out by now and feeling depleted, I want you to hear this very clearly. You're not late. You're not lost. You're just no longer willing to live a life that looks good on paper, but doesn't feel good in your body. And that, my friends, is growth. What we might call a purpose crisis is really just the moment that your soul stops accepting autopilot. It's you realizing that being impressive isn't the same as being fulfilled. That, staying busy isn't the same as being alive. And that you can do everything right and still feel like something's missing. So if you don't feel your purpose right now, you don't need to panic. Purpose isn't a destination. It's a relationship you're rebuilding with yourself. And the next version of you won't be created by one giant breakthrough. It'll be created by small moments where you choose yourself on purpose. A tiny yes that feels true. A no that protects your peace. 10 minutes of curiosity with no pressure attached. That's how you come back online. And one day, you're going to look back and realize that you didn't find your purpose. You remembered it. Because it was never missing. It was just buried under years of noise and expectations and survival. Okay, future you isn't some distant glow up. Future you is built every time you choose alignment over approval. So go easy on yourself. You're on your way back. And that's something worth celebrating. All right, my friends, I'm proud of you for being here. Don't forget to join the online support community on Patreon to continue the conversation with other millennials who get you. You can find more about that on Club Chrysalis on the website, www.themillennialreset.com. And I will see you on the next one.